Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The scent of burnt cedar and freezing rain hit Julian before the pain did, buckling his knees against the mahogany floor of the very office he'd sworn to burn down. "Get up," the voice from behind the desk commanded, low, vibrationless, and terrifyingly calm. "I do not tolerate hysterics in my faculty, Professor Vane, regardless of your tenure status." Julian Vane, the youngest and most controversial literature professor at St. Sterling's elite university, clawed his fingers into the plush Persian rug. He tried to speak, to spit a venomous retort at the man looming over him, but his throat had closed up. His blood was boiling, a fever spike so sudden and violent it felt like he had been injected with molten lead. This wasn't just a fever. It was a biological imperative slamming into him like a freight train. His suppressants, the military-grade blockers he took religiously to hide his secondary gender, had failed. And they had failed in the worst possible place on Earth, inside the soundproofed, hermetically sealed sanctuary of Principal Alaric Thorne. Alaric Thorne, the Ice King of Sterling. A prime alpha of such terrifying lineage and potency that merely making eye contact with him made lesser men tremble. He was a creature of rules, silence, and absolute control. And Julian? Julian was chaos incarnate, a hidden omega masquerading as a beta who had spent the last 3 years making Alaric's life a living hell with petitions, protests, and public debates. I said. Alaric's chair scraped against the floor as he stood, his shadow stretching long and predatory across the room. "Get up, Vane. Don't. Come near me." Julian gasped, the words tearing out of his throat. He scrambled backward, his back hitting the heavy oak bookshelf. His vision blurred, swimming in a haze of red. The air in the room, usually sterile and smelling of old paper, was suddenly thick. It was suffocating. It was then that Alaric stopped. The principal stood 6'4" in his immaculate, charcoal three-piece suit, his silver-rimmed glasses catching the dim light of the storm raging outside the panoramic windows. He froze, his head tilting slightly to the side. The scent had hit him. It wasn't the smell of fear. It was the scent of wild jasmine and honey, sweet enough to rot teeth, potent enough to bring a devastating war to a standstill. It was the scent of a prime omega in the first, violent throes of a heat cycle. "You," Alaric whispered, the single word heavy with a sudden, dark realization. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees, yet the air crackled with static electricity. "You are an omega." Julian squeezed his eyes shut, his body trembling violently. "Let me out. Unlock the door, Thorne. That's an order." "You are in no position to give orders," Alaric said, his voice no longer sounding like the detached administrator. It had dropped an octave, resonating with a growl that vibrated in Julian's very bones. "And I cannot open the door. The blizzard has triggered the university's automated lockdown protocols. We are sealed in until the storm passes or security overrides the system manually." "Then break it," Julian screamed, clutching his chest. "Break the damn window." I can't be here with you. Not you." "Why?" Alaric took a step forward. Then another. His movements were fluid, predatory, stripping away the facade of the civilized academic. "Because you hate me? Or because your pheromones are currently saturating this room, signaling that you are looking for a mate?" "I would rather die," Julian spat, though the defiance was undercut by a whimper as a wave of heat crashed through his abdomen. "Biological incompatibilities aside," Alaric said, stopping just inches from where Julian was huddled on the floor. He crouched down, his expensive suit straining against his thighs. He didn't touch Julian, but his presence was a physical weight. "You have lied to the board. You have forged medical documents to hold a position forbidden to your dynamic. I should expel you from this campus immediately." "Do it," Julian challenged, looking up. His eyes, usually a sharp, intelligent hazel, were blown wide, black with lust and pain. "Fire me. Ruin me. Just stay away." Alaric stared at him. For years, they had danced around each other. Julian, the firebrand revolutionary, and Alaric, the immovable object. They had argued in board meetings until they were hoarse. Alaric had rejected Julian's proposals. Julian had mocked Alaric's rigidity. It was a rivalry that the entire campus whispered about. But now, stripped of the politics and the pretenses, something else was surfacing. Alaric reached out, his gloved hand hovering near Julian's sweat-dampened face. "I cannot fire you," Alaric murmured, his composure fracturing. "Because if you leave this room in this state, every alpha in the building will tear through the security doors to get to you. You have no idea how potent you are, do you?" "I took my suppressants," Julian groaned, his head lolling back against the books. "They shouldn't have failed." "They didn't fail," Alaric corrected darkly. He pulled his glove off, finger by finger, revealing a large, scarred hand. "They were overridden. Suppressants do not work in the presence of a fated mate." The silence that followed was louder than the blizzard howling outside. Julian's breath hitched. "No, that's a myth. A fairy tale for romance novels." "Is it?" Alaric's eyes, usually a cold, steel gray, were bleeding into a luminous gold. The alpha within him was waking up, clawing at the bars of his discipline. "Then explain why, for 3 years, I have been unable to look away from you. Explain why your insolence, which would have had anyone else terminated, I found invigorating." "You hate me," Julian whispered, terrified by the truth settling in his gut. "I tried to," Alaric admitted. He leaned in, inhaling deeply near the pulse point of Julian's neck. Julian shuddered, a jolt of pleasure arcing down his spine, so intense he nearly sobbed. "I tried to hate you because wanting you was illogical. Wanting a subordinate, a troublemaker. It was against every rule I hold dear. But biology, it seems, does not care for my rules." "Alaric." Julian breathed the name for the first time, and the sound of it snapped the last thread of the principal's restraint. "You are in pain," Alaric stated, his voice rough. "You need a knot. You need to be claimed. If you do not, this heat will burn you out. It could damage your internal systems permanently." "I won't be your whore," Julian grit out, fighting the instinct to bare his neck. "I won't be another notch on the bedpost of the great Alaric Thorn." Alaric laughed, a dark, humorless sound. "You think this is about sex? You think I want a quick release?" He grabbed Julian's chin, forcing him to look into the golden abyss of his eyes. "If I touch you, Julian, I am not letting go. If I claim you, I am taking everything. Your tenure, your defiance, your heart. I will bind you to me so thoroughly that you will forget what it was like to be alone." "You're a tyrant," Julian sobbed, his body betraying him, shifting closer to the heat radiating from the alpha. "I am," Alaric agreed. "And you are dying for it." The pain in Julian's abdomen twisted, a sharp cramp that doubled him over. He cried out, clutching Alaric's lapels. The scent of cedar was overwhelming now, mixing with the musk of a powerful alpha ready to rut. It was intoxicating. It was safety. It was home. "Help me," Julian pleaded, his pride shattering under the weight of his biology. "Please. It hurts. Tell me what you want," Alaric demanded, relentless. He needed the verbal consent, the surrender. He needed the rebel to lay down his arms. "I want you," Julian confessed, the words tasting like ash and honey. "I want you to make it stop. I want you to claim me." Alaric didn't hesitate. He surged forward, crushing his lips against Julian's. It wasn't a kiss. It was a collision. It was 3 years of suppressed rage, debate, and secret admiration pouring into a single moment of contact. Julian tasted like sweet wine and defiance. Alaric groaned, his tongue sweeping into Julian's mouth, claiming the territory with possessive strokes. He pulled Julian up, easily lifting the smaller man onto the heavy oak desk, scattering paperwork and expensive fountain pens onto the floor. The sound of glass breaking echoed as a lamp was swept aside, but neither man cared. "You are mine," Alaric growled against Julian's lips, his hands tearing at the buttons of Julian's shirt. "Do you understand? You belong to me." "Yes," Julian gasped, wrapping his legs around Alaric's waist, pulling him closer. "Yes, Alpha." The use of the title shattered Alaric's remaining control. He buried his face in the crook of Julian's neck, inhaling the concentrated scent of the gland there. The gland that was swollen, pulsing, begging to be bitten. "I'm going to mark you," Alaric warned, his voice guttural. "Everyone will know. The board, the students, the world. You will smell like me for the rest of your life." "Do it," Julian urged, tilting his head back, baring his throat in the ultimate sign of submission. "Mark me, Alaric." Alaric's teeth grazed the sensitive skin, teasing, before he bit down hard. Julian screamed, a sound of pure ecstasy and pain, as the bond snapped into place. It was a psychic shockwave, a flood of Alaric's emotions pouring into his mind. Possessiveness, adoration, an overwhelming protective instinct that felt like a warm blanket wrapping around his soul. He felt Alaric's love, hidden for so long behind cold glares and harsh memos. It was vast, deep, and terrifyingly intense. And Alaric felt Julian's chaos quieting, the frantic fear dissolving into trust. The rest of the night was a blur of feverish skin, tangled limbs, and the storm raging outside that paled in comparison to the storm inside the office. The power dynamics of the university, principal and professor, dissolved. Here, there was only Alpha and Omega, the ancient dance of predator and prey resolving into perfect harmony. When the morning sun finally broke through the gray clouds, the blizzard had passed. The automated shutters on the windows retracted with a soft hum, letting blinding white light flood the room. The office was a disaster zone. Books were toppled, the rug was rucked up, and the desk was chaos. Alaric sat in his leather chair, looking pristine despite his rumpled shirt and the discarded tie on the floor. He was reading a file, his glasses perched on his nose, the picture of the icy administrator once more. Except for Julian. Julian was asleep on the leather sofa, wrapped in Alaric's suit jacket, which swallowed his smaller frame. On his neck, stark and bruising against the pale skin, was a bite mark. A claiming mark. Alaric looked over the rim of his glasses as Julian stirred. The Omega blinked, disorientation clouding his features before memory rushed back. He sat up, clutching the jacket, his face flushing crimson. "Morning," Alaric said, turning a page of the report. "Alaric," Julian croaked. "The lockdown ended an hour ago. I dismissed the security team. Told them I was working through the night and didn't want to be disturbed." Julian looked around the wrecked office. "We destroyed your office. Collateral damage," Alaric dismissed. He stood up and walked over to the sofa, his expression softening in a way Julian had never seen before. He sat on the edge of the cushion and reached out, his thumb brushing over the bite mark on Julian's neck. "Do you regret it?" Alaric asked, his voice low. Julian leaned into the touch, the bond humming contentedly in his chest. The hatred was gone, burned away by the heat. In its place was a profound understanding. "I should. You're still an arrogant tyrant who tries to control everything. And you are still a chaotic brat who refuses to follow protocol," Alaric countered, a small smirk playing on his lips. "But," Julian sighed, covering Alaric's hand with his own, "I don't regret it. I can feel you, Alaric. In my head. I know you weren't trying to destroy me all those years. You were trying to protect yourself from this. I failed," Alaric whispered, leaning in to kiss Julian's forehead. "And I am glad I did." "So what now?" Julian asked, gesturing to the door. "We can't hide this. The scent is permanent." Alaric stood up, pulling Julian with him. He adjusted the jacket around Julian's shoulders, buttoning it to keep him warm. "Now," Alaric said, his eyes flashing with that dangerous, possessive gold, "we go to the board meeting. Like this." Julian gasped. "I'm wearing your jacket. I have a mark on my neck." "Exactly," Alaric said, opening the door to the hallway where the sounds of the waking university were beginning to echo. He took Julian's hand, interlacing their fingers. "Let them look. Let them whisper. Let them know that the rebel professor finally belongs to the principal. And let them know," he added, his voice dropping to a dark promise, "that if anyone dares to look at you the wrong way, they will answer to me." Julian looked at the man he had called an enemy for 3 years. He saw the strength, the loyalty, and the fierce love that burned beneath the ice. He squeezed Alaric's hand back. "Fine," Julian smirked, his old spark returning. "But if they fire us, we're burning the building down." Alaric smiled, a genuine, rare smile that transformed his face. "If they fire us, Julian, I'll buy the building and burn it down for you myself." Together, they stepped out into the corridor, hand in hand, ready to face the world, not as enemies, but as a force of nature that no rulebook could ever contain. And that is how the rebellion tamed the king, and how the king gave the rebellion a throne. If you enjoyed seeing the icy Principal Thorn completely lose control for his professor, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you let your worst enemy claim you if it meant saving your life? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt. Masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art, 2 men, BL, yaoi, omegavers, man 1. Principal Alaric Thorne, tall, broad shoulders, slicked back silver blonde hair, sharp glasses, cold blue eyes turning gold, wearing unbuttoned charcoal suit vest and white shirt, dominant pose, standing. Man 2. Professor Julian Vane, shorter, messy dark hair, hazel eyes, wearing oversized suit jacket over bare chest, visible bite mark on neck, flushed. Face, defiant but submissive expression, sitting on mahogany desk. Background is dimly lit luxurious academic office. Rain on panoramic window, scattered papers and books on floor, dramatic lighting, cinematic composition, sharp focus, intricate details.